from Liège, Alexander Vinokourov, Andy Schleck, who is also on the start this morning, and another massive pre-race favourite, the Spanish rider Alejandro Valverde. This really is the heart of the Ardennes. 14 degrees Celsius this morning. Clear blue skies. A little bit of a breeze in the air should make it fairly difficult down towards the end. The riders have been racing now for 95 kilometres, and a very royal visitor right at the very start in the Place Lambert. King Philip of the Belgians to meet King Philip of the cyclists. Philippe Gilbert, the former world champion. Alejandro Valverde down there as well, with Rui Costa, the world champion. Eddie Merckx, who won this race on 5 occasions, looking very fit and healthy as the official speaker. Daniel Monjas talks to Andy Schleck, who won this race back in 2009. Jelle Venendaert has said that he feels he's got the form to win this race, so does Jurgen van der Broek. This was all earlier on this morning as we look at Simon Gerrans, the Australian national champion, just around about 9:30 this morning in the Place Lambert, just outside of the Palais des Princes-Évêques, or the Bishops of Liège. Joachim Rodriguez, Tony Martin as well for Team Omega Pharma Quick-Step. All of these riders wondering what Liège-Bastogne-Liège will hold in store for them today. Also, the champion of Poland riding for the Omega Pharma Quick-Step, Michael Kwiatkowski. He's an outsider on many people's lips. Former winner Maxime Igliski of Team Astana. And of course the crowd favourite, Thomas Voeckler, the red, white and blue, indicating a former champion of France. And how about this for an outsider? Vincenzo Nibali showed very good form of late, and the previous winner of last year, Dan Martin, who rode exceptionally well a little earlier on in this week. Prince Philip of the Belgians will in fact travel out on the race route today, as we get a chance to him seeing and waving away the official start of 197 riders as they move away from the Place, the newly renovated Place Lambert, which is right along the back of the 16th century Palace of the Bishops of Liège. The last Belgian to win, that was Philippe Gilbert back in 2011, and in that year he had an incredible gold race, the Flèche Wallonne and Liège-Bastogne-Liège. But there are only 7 riders who've actually done the double of winning Flèche Wallonne and Liège-Bastogne-Liège. Gilbert obviously being one of those. Alejandro Valverde, Rebellin of Italy, Moreno Argentin, Eddie Merckx, Stan Ockers and Ferdy Kubler, the Swiss rider, did it on 2 occasions in 1951 and 1952. This is the climb of the Haute Levée, and if you've ever ridden it, you remember this climb once you hit the bottom because of that big concrete separating wall down the middle of it. Narrows the road a fraction. Up at the front, Europe car, and that is Kevin Redzer right in the middle there in the white sunglasses, looking over his shoulder, thinking about Thomas Voeckler, and of course Yukiya Arashiro, the Spanish national champion, the Japanese national champion, as Jesus Herrera, the Spanish national champion, seems to be struggling at the back a fraction. Maybe he's just going back. No, he's got a mechanical incident. You just saw the sign there from his hand. That was to indicate to the race referee that he's got a problem at the back end of his machine, and that was hopefully the race referee would be able to radio that back to the team car so the mechanic is ready when he comes up alongside his rider. There's the world champion, number 41, Simon Gerrans, 71. Looks good, Gerrans, just over on the right hand side. Orica green edge, a bit further back, number 75 is Christian Meyer, Canadian rider on the Orica green edge squad. See there's a lot of riders. Now this is interesting because this is Joachim Rodriguez. Now he is injured. We do know that he's had a couple of nasty accidents, one in the Amstel Gold Race and one in climb, and again getting himself Team Top Sport. Goes through there. It's Jacobs. So he's having a good day out, Peter Jacobs, and that makes 5 out of 5 for him. There's the rider who wears number 182, Top Sport Vlaanderen. Jacobs, he's been professional for quite some time. In fact, he turned professional back in 2006 for a team called Unibet. rode for Silence Lotto for a couple of seasons, and he's been on Top Sport Vlaanderen since 2010. But damage at the back, one of the pre-race possibles. Joachim Rodriguez, you can see the little scrape on his elbow there. Where's number 11, the leader of his Katusha squad? If he's struggling here at the slopes of the Haute-Levée, that's not a good indication for the Spaniard. So we're saying, well, wow, what's going on here? Because we're in 217, just having a look. It's not often you see a top man like this, one of the pre-race favourites, really struggling. Purito, as they call him, looking down at his canyon bike. He won the Tour of Catalonia this year, having led the race for 4 days. And as we start to see one or two little moves coming off the front of the peloton, I don't think we'll see very much more of Joachim Rodriguez today. So Race Radio is even announcing now that Rodriguez has been left behind as a small little group starts to scurry off the front end of the main field. Now there will be some reaction to this, and that will probably damn Joachim Rodriguez to the back of the race. He turns 35 years of age in the early part of next month. Good start to the year with a win in the Tour of Catalonia. He's won 43 races, but he's had a very tough week in the Ardennes with that nasty crash. The first one in the Amstel Gold race, and then the other one, which was not less well on. In fact, it was only about 4 or 5 kilometers to go. And he said he thought that he might warm up a little bit, but he was having difficulty breathing because of those accidents. 12 is Michael Anderson. Now, this is big pressure coming from Europcar. Now, Europcar, obviously, thinking about the man in second position there, Pierre Rolland. Great climber, Rolland, as a bit further back. Now, this is Bacalans. Now, he was involved in the crash. Now, he probably wants to change where there's a lot of action coming on. Sebastian Minard of AG2R. He, too, is looking for some assistance from the team car. Minard, been a professional since 2005. Now, this is a big move here. As I said, this is a long climb. Pierre Rolland made any reaction at all. They're going through the feeding station. I think this is an unofficial feeding station over the top of the Haute-Levée, because the real feeding circuit originally designed back in 1920, but the first race actually never took place on this circuit until many years. It's now a much smaller circuit than it used to be. The last time they had the Belgian Grand Prix on that course was in 2010, and in 1988 it was the home of a Mexican winner of a stage of the Tour de France, when Raúl Alcala. So, Van den Broek, hope for the Belgians, one of the hopes for the Belgians. He was presented to the King of the Belgians this morning, as Van den Broek was 7th in the Ruta del Sol last year, but in a nasty year he came out of the Tour with a win. Now, Ramūnas Navadauskas. We mentioned earlier on a couple of riders who won the under-23 edition of Liège-Bastogne-Liège. Well, this is one of them alongside young Bacalans. Now, this is to toughen up the race for Garmin Sharp. Now, Navadauskas is just putting the hammer down a little bit here if he can, just to see what sort of damage he can do. And he won the under-23 version of Liège-Bastogne-Liège. He's now 26 years of age. He won the Circuit of the Sarthe in the early part of this year, but you see the panic that these little attacks are putting on. You see how the road also continues to clamber up a fraction there as you look. It's certainly Race Radio getting very frantic now about all of the chaos going on at the back of the race. They've now got around about 15 kilometers before they get to the next big climb of the day, and that is the climb of the Côte de la Véquée, which has been brought back in. It's after they've gone through the feeding station in Staumont or La Glaise, and again it's almost like a little col, if you like. It's around about 3.5 kilometers long. A crash. There we go. That's the world champion down on the ground, number 41, Rui Costa. He's gone down there very, very hard indeed now. He was riding at the front end of the main field. I wonder where that accident actually happened. Also gone down one of the Colombian riders, number 248, and that is Andre Torres. The other riders who go down there, it looked to me one of the riders from Omega Pharma Quickstep. Just looking on the far side as well. Well, I think it's the rider who went down there from Team Sky as well, but most importantly the world champion Rui Costa went down now. All of this chaos is happening a little bit further back down the main field. Let's have a look at this. You see, it was actually halfway down the main field, and the rider went down there from Team Sky, I think it was David Lopez. So 3 or 4 riders went down quite hard. Look at the chaos that an accident like that causes in the main field. When you look down, there's gaps appearing in the peloton. Everyone's looking around. They've heard the grinding of steel against the road. They know something has happened. They're looking back to see if any of their own teammates or leaders are involved in a problem like that. This is the left-hand turn now, as they turn away from the main road from the Haute-Levade now, as they circumnavigate the motor racing circuit of Francorchamps. So let's see what's going on here. Lots of accidents. Oh, there's a crash. There was a rider there, was up alongside his team car trying to get some help. It was an AG2R rider trying to get himself looked after by the team mechanic, and he's gone down very hard indeed. These are the moments. We're still looking at a good 2 hours to go to the finish, but these are the moments that lay down the foundations that can change the result of a race like this. The leading group of 5 riders, they're just minding their own business, riding through the Ardennes this afternoon, holding on to as much of their advantage as they can. They're now looking at 75 kilometers to go, and the 5 riders who at 75 kilometers to go still hold on to 5 minutes and 30 seconds. But the gap's plunging down now as we have another quick look at these riders. They escaped, just to remind you, after 12 kilometers of racing here this afternoon, and they built up a lead of almost 16 minutes. One man has disappeared from that leading group, Marco Minard, but the 5 who remain are Permin Lang, IAM Cycling, Michael Koch of Cannondale, Bono of Team Lampre, and Peter Jacobs of Top Sport Vlaanderen. So 75 kilometers to go. The big climb, the next big climb that they will all be thinking about is the Côte de la Vecquet. So that's 12 kilometers away from that climb for the leaders. Good to see Mick Rogers over on the left-hand side, riding his first race back after being exonerated of that positive test for clenbuterol, which was deemed was accidentally ingested from tainted beef, which he consumed while participating in the Tour of Beijing. We're hearing over race radio that Rui Costa has abandoned the race. So Rui Costa, the world champion, has abandoned because of that nasty crash. So he won't be getting the victory that he was dreaming of here this afternoon in the rainbow jersey. So there we are. There's confirmation in the 100th edition of Liège-Bastogne-Liège, the abandon of the world champion Rui Costa. Over on the far side, the leader of Wanty Group Gobert, Belgian rider Jérôme Bonny, number 231, just trying to stay in contact. Now you can start to see the shape of the Ardennes, the rolling hills of the Ardennes, as we make our way back up towards the north now and rejoin the Tête de la Course. Good to see this rider, Venter, South African rider on MTN Quebec. Not worried at all by the reputations of many of these riders in this leading group with him. Happy to represent MTN Quebec at the front end of the race. So a little bit of calm now returning for the 5 leaders, taking on board drinks from the help of Team Mavic, keeping themselves topped up with fluids. Very important in a race like this. 263 kilometers, around about 6.5 hours of racing we would expect on a day like this, and the gap down to 5 minutes. The skies still looking as if there is not going to be any rain. It's Some dark clouds starting to creep in. The crowds are also starting to build up here. There's lots of Belgian flags around as everybody wonders whether or not their man King Philippe Gilbert will be able to take the victory for King Philippe of the Belgians. So Etienne Quebecer have got a man in the breakaway, and there he is just over on the left hand side, sponsored by Trek Bicycles, a nice yellow bike for Benter. He certainly hasn't missed any work in this leading group of 5 riders, which is we're inside of 5 minutes now. The motorbikes getting out of the way. So rather sad to see the abandon there of the world champion Rui Costa. That crash coming halfway down the main field. These crashes are because of the nervousness, because of the fatigue that's starting to creep into the riders. The last German rider, by the way, to win Liège-Bastogne-Liège was back in 1979, and that was Didi Tura. So there's the man who's been the most consistent, number 182 on the climbs. He was the first over Côte de la Roche, first over the Côte de Saint-Roch, the Côte de Wanne, Côte de Stocker and the Côte de Haute-Levée. Will he survive now, Peter Jacobs, to be the first man to go over the Côte de la Vecchie? Scuttling back, 203 is Iker Kamano of Team NetApp. This is the lull before the storm. Also, just caught a quick glimpse of one of the riders from Team Sky hanging out at the back, as I think the calm now starts to come into this race. A little indication there from Michael Rogers, just to show there's a little bit of traffic furniture on the road furniture, which makes it very difficult and dangerous for professional bike riders all over the world these days. 71 kilometers, 4 minutes and 55 seconds. As we look at these live images of the 100th edition of Liège-Bastogne-Liège, as we go through the small town of Rouvy. Next we'll go past the Moulin de Rouvy, which is the windmill of Rouvy, before coming down onto the main road again of the National 633 and into the town of La Glaise. And that's when we'll start to line ourselves up for the next big climb of the day, the Côte de la Vecchie. There's Richie Porte there sitting at the back. Now Richie Porte probably missing out on his mate, who did not start this morning, Chris Froome, the Kenyan-born British rider who was hoping to ride well in Liège-Bastogne-Liège, and a number of people said, well, quite possibly Froome could be one of the surprise performers in this. But as they came out of the hotel this morning, we were told that in fact he's got a little bit of a chest infection, which he didn't want to aggravate because of the cold temperature here. It's dropped down to around about 12 degrees Celsius in the heart of the Ardennes. Just looking at BMC, it's Peter Velits who's sitting on the front there, stamping out the pace for Slovakia and Team BMC. For him, he's very concerned about doing as much work as possible for Philippe Gilbert. Steve Cummins, who did a lot of work in the first part of this race, has now disappeared. And I noticed a lot of riders in blue and white jerseys for Team Saxo Tinkoff have moved forward. And that's obviously for their man Roman Kreuziger, who was involved in an accident just a little bit earlier on, but they managed to get him safely back into the main field. Well, we're getting confirmation coming over race radio as well that in fact Joaquim Rodriguez has also pulled out of the race. So a number of pre-race big favourites are pulling out, one because of injuries from a previous race, of course is Joaquim Rodriguez, and Rui Costa because of an injury experienced here in this race. So rather sad to see the world champion having to pull out like that, as we're inside of 70 kilometers to go and inside of 5 minutes of racing left. Bit of a blow to the Lamprey squad, who've been dogged by injury in this early part of the year as well, because just on a training crash a little while back, Chris Horner, the winner of the Vuelta a España, was riding through a tunnel when somebody knocked him off his bike, and obviously he ended up in hospital in intensive care. Far side there, number 91, Bout Mollema. He could be the man to do it for that team a little bit later on. As I said, he placed well in the Amstel Gold Race, but look at the organisation now of Saxo Tinkoff. They don't want to do too much at this point, but watch out for a little move coming from them as we start to get a bit closer to the Côte de la Veuquie. Velits is the man on the front. Brilliant professional bike rider, Velits. Well, as we mentioned earlier, Chris Froome didn't start the day, and neither too did Peter Kenyuk, which is a little bit of a surprise. And Richie Porte has been sitting quite happily at the back end of the field. Now, is he here for training, or is he here just to keep himself out of trouble? And if he feels good on the running towards a finish, come up towards the front of this race and have a little bit of a crack, because the decision is very often made on the Côte de la Roche au Faucon, the Rock of the Falcons. Before, rider Heyzedal, also quite happy to sit at the back end of the pack. Oric Greenedge, Simon Clark going forward to answer a nature break. There is Vandenbroek, 121. He was suffering. He was really in difficulty when he went over the top there of the climb of the Côte de Haute-Levée, but he's managed to drag himself back into the event. And there's Miguel Angel Rubiano over on the left-hand side, the Colombian rider. National Road Racing Champion, a title which he took just a couple of weeks ago. Lots of work being done now. 68 kilometres to go, 4:55. It seems to be locked in a bit now. They're no longer chasing as it was organised earlier on, but I think they're waiting for the next vital part of these few climbs that the race will throw up at them. So, Etienne Quebecer, happy to have a man in that leading group, I would suggest. And these men, they realise that once we start to get to the next few climbs, the next climbs on the horizon are going to be the Côte de la Veuquie, which is the 6th climb of the day, followed by the Côte de la Redoute, which is famous for every professional bike rider. They've seen it so many times on television. The approach through the town of Remouchon, and then the long ascent of 2.5 kilometres. Etienne Quebecer, not only, as we look here at Wendner, are riding not only in Liège-Bastogne-Liège, but they've also got a very strong squad making a return to the Tour of Turkey, which is probably in the warmer climbs of this year's of this day's racing in Europe. A race that Mark Cavendish is actually part event to home his speed. He decided this year not to participate in the Giro d'Italia, leaving that to one side, feeling maybe that in the past it might have fatigued him a little bit leading up to his sprinting for the Tour de France, which is what's going to be his main goal for this season. So the climber at the end of this race is the one that everybody talks about, so the Côte de Saint-Nicolas, but not very many people talk about the final climb of the day, which is not actually a categorized climb. It's the climb up to the town of Ons, which is right nestled up against the motorway to Brussels. And that climb itself is a climb of around about 1.5 kilometres, and very often that's where the decision for the final victory comes out. But to get there, you've got to climb over the Côte de la Roche au Faucon first, followed by Saint-Nicolas, and then hopefully be in with a chance when it comes up to this final climb of the day, up to Ons. And then once you turn left into the final 300 metres, it's actually completely flat. And that's when, if you've got some sprinting ability, you've got to wait until the final moment. And that's how Dan Martin got himself the victory last year. Says Pierre Roland in third position behind Velits. But certainly, I have to say that Saxo Tinkoff are paying a great deal of attention here this afternoon. Rory Sutherland is riding the race for Saxo Tinkoff. I haven't spotted him so far, but he's never far away from doing plenty of work. Europe Car have decided they're going to do some pacemaking, but the gap has suddenly crept up a fraction. Just looking there at Kevin Retzer, the rider in third position for Team Europcar. Although he lives in Versailles, he actually hails from the island of Guadeloupe in the Caribbean. As we continue now, the roads here in this part of Belgium are very, very good, as we get a chance here to see the difference in styles between the leading group of 5 on the left-hand side and the peloton on the right-hand side. Vellet's doing quite a lot of work. He's quite happy to do the pacemaker. They sacrificed in the first part of the race, they sacrificed Steve Cummings quite a bit. Peter Vellet's moving across. He's the national time trial champion of Slovakia, by the way, as opposed to the national road racing champion, who is Peter Sagan. He moved across from Omega Pharma Quickstep during the winter transfer season to become an integral part of Team BMC. He's a solid worker. One of his great performances was he was the World Under-23 road racing champion back in 2007. And finished second overall in the Vuelta a España back in 2010. So the leaders now are on the Côte de la Veque, a climb of 3.1 kilometers, an average gradient of 6%. And it's on this climb a couple of years ago that Alexander Vinokourov went out to get himself a victory, attacked on this climb with a certain Jens Voigt, the Jensi as they call him. So, as you can see, there's a little bit of a slowing in the peloton. A few riders scrambling at the back. The legs now starting to scream out for a little bit of respite, a little bit of rest. There is no rest in the Ardennes. These roads are now, from here right the way down towards the finish, are up and down for the whole of the afternoon. Europcar are doing a good job of work at the front. They obviously feel that their man Pierre Rolland has got very good legs. I wonder how Thomas Voeckler is feeling this afternoon. Voeckler has had a quiet start to the season with nothing really to shout home about, but Voeckler is pretty much not part of the main core of those Europcar riders we're looking at. Redza is in third position. Pierre Rolland is in fifth position. Behind him is the other rider from Europcar is Peric Kemener, a real Breton name. As we start to look a little bit further back, Saxo Tinkoff or Tinkoff Saxo Bank are very present at the front end of the main field. There will be, the next big battle will start to come as we line up for the Côte de la Redoute. Everybody realizes that's the big battle. It's a long climb as well, long and steep. 2.5 kilometers at 7.5%. It goes up alongside the E25 motorway, which goes from Liège right the way down towards the area of Luxembourg, the Duchy of Luxembourg. Number 88, the Finnish national champion there on the FDJ squad in the white jersey with a blue stripe on it, the blue cross on it, and that's Jussi Väikkönen. FDJ, very much a French squad. The team manager, Frank Pinault, has got 7 French riders on the start line this morning, and Väikkönen, the sole foreigner creeping into the French squad. Just looking at the style here of coach number 154, it's starting to look a little bit more laboured now. This is the long climb, as you can see. It's a long, steady climb, the Côte de la Veque. It's been reintroduced this year, which is why a number of riders came down here to have a look. Most of the riders have stayed in this region for a good 10 days now, because they came up here, installed themselves, many in Holland for the Amstel Gold Race in the city of Maastricht on the Maas. Came to look at the course for the Flèche Wallonne, and also came to have a quick look at the circuit for Liège-Bastogne-Liège. 63 kilometers to go now, 4 minutes and 15 seconds. Concentration now, a lot of riders moving forward in the light blue jerseys of Garmin Sharp. Looking around, Tony Martin is still there in the Omega Pharma Quickstep jersey. Peter Vellet's in the red and black jersey. Kevin Retzer is there for Europcar. Pierre Rolland is the third place rider, looking very nervous as he battles to stay in the front end of the main field. They now know that once they come into this little town here, this is the town of Stormont, they take this right-hand turn, there it is, and now they start the climb of the Côte de la Vecchie. There it is. If you go straight on, in fact, you carry on down the road towards the town of Remouchon, and that is where we'll find, in about 20 minutes' time, the Côte de la Redoute. Look at how much that gap has dropped down as well there. It's dropped down pretty dramatically there to around about 4 minutes. Just on the right-hand side there is the Colombian rider on Team BMC, and that's John Atapuma. Good man to bring onto the squad for a little bit later on as well. Back in the main field, Vaikkonen just struggling a little bit. He wants to stay in contact with this peloton. This is when the decanting process starts. The riders with the slightly weaker legs slowly start to slip to the back end of the main field. No more energy left to fight and get back up towards the top end of the sharp end of the peloton. Mick Rogers there looking quite comfortable for his first race back. Must have been a long, hard psychological winter for Mick Rogers. Wondering how the Court of Arbitration were going to respond to that positive test for clenbuterol in the Japan Cup. But eventually in fact, rather strange, because the International Cycling Union warned riders not to eat meat when they went to the Tour of Beijing because of the possibility of tainting it with clenbuterol. And I think they made the right decision where Mick Rogers was concerned, and I think he's very happy now to be back in racing, getting himself in form and ready for a big attack on the Tour de France later on in the year. Rui Costa crashed out and quit the race. Abrasions and bruising to his shoulder is being announced on race radio, and I'm sure we'll hear a little bit more about that later on. So it's bad luck. There's Rory Sutherland. We've been looking for him for a while. He's the big Tinkoff-Saxo rider just in the middle of the group there. He'd be looking after Roman Kreuziger. He was delayed a little earlier on by a crash of the Czech rider, but I don't think he was injured by that, and he was quickly helped and escorted back into the main field by his team. Look at 500 meters to go to the summit of the Côte de la Vecchie. Now, one rider has won all 5 summits we've been over so far, and that's Peter Jacobs. He's currently sitting in 3rd position. Yes, the Belgians are all out to support the race this afternoon. Liège-Bastogne-Liège, the oldest professional bike race on the calendar, 1892, first organised. There's Sutherland. The rider coming through there for Europe Car is Kemener. That's next rider through, Pierre Roland. 196, Kevin Rezza. 2002, Cesare Benedetti. Lots of nervousness now. The Trek factory racing rider moving forward. Wondering whether or not there's going to be any performance from Frank Schleck this afternoon. That was Bob Jungels. 3 riders from Luxembourg on that squad, Frank and Andy Schleck and Bob Jungels, who is the national champion. As we go back with the lead of 3.5 minutes, it's really now starting to crumble, that advantage that these riders had, which at one stage was up in the 16-minute margin. A pity Carlos Betancourt was not here at the start this morning, the Colombian rider on AG2R. He, like Chris Froome, pulling out on the start date, and rumours coming to us, and there's no way of being absolutely certain, but we are told that he actually attended the team meeting in the team bus this morning and didn't come out because he could felt that little tickling on his shoulder. The fact that it was 12 to 14 degrees Celsius, he decided he was not going to come out and ride the race. Kreuziger, former winner of the Amstel Gold Race, so he's the rider who's got the right skills. It's Anke Sorensen with the yellow and the speed, riding in excess of 30 kilometers an hour on the slopes of this climb, which is, as I said, a 3.5 kilometer climb at around about 6% the average gradient. But this is serious stuff now that Mickey Rogers is starting to dish out. Louis Menches at the back of the group, Daniel Teklemanot of Eritrea is also starting to struggle a bit, but at least MTN Quebec from South Africa have got a rider in that leading five-man breakaway. He's been there right from the 12th kilometre of the race. So 2 Australians now starting to really turn up the screws. It's good to see Mick Rogers is back. As I say, it must have been a very difficult psychological winter for Mick Rogers, wondering wouldn't he be allowed to come back into the sport. And I think finally we've seen that decision is right, as we've got another Australian up alongside him, and they really are, look at that, they really are putting some pressure on the front end of that main field. It's inside of 3 minutes. That's about 2 minutes wiped away by the 2 Australians, Sutherland and Mickey Rogers. This is their prey, but I don't think they're too worried about that. I think the 2 Aussies at the front of the main field, what they're doing currently, putting the pressure on, making it more difficult in the main field, setting up the foundations for a move to come a little bit later on from their man Roman Kreuziger, who, as we saw earlier, was involved in a little bit of a crash, delayed by the crash, but fought himself back into the main field. That was around about the Côte d'Oine. No panic. Look at this, Rogers. He's in the white sunglasses, looks over, he looks calm as a cucumber, as they would say in English. Looks across at his teammate there. They're just chatting away, but they are having a serious effect on the front end of this race. The leading group of 5 are now inside of the 3-minute margin. 3 times a world champion, Mick Rogers. I think he would have had the yellow jersey in the Tour de France a number of years ago if he hadn't crashed out and broken his collarbone, tried to carry on, but just could not continue with a broken collarbone. He's taken a back seat now, but he's gone back to have a quick chat with his teammate Rory Sutherland, who's the 3rd place rider from Tinkoff Saxo. But the one man, if we're talking about shouting or waving the flag for Australia, I think the Australians would wave the flag for Simon Gerrans. Orica Greenwich, I think, were very clever in their preparation for this race. They saw how Gerrans rode in the Amstel Gold Race just a little while ago, just last week on Sunday, and they said, no, we're not going to put you. There's Gerrans over on the right-hand side, as if on cue. You see the yellow shoulders on his jersey there, sitting on the wheel of Philippe Gilbert. Now, he didn't ride the midweek race at Flèche-Wallonne. Philippe Gilbert rode the race, but I don't think it dug too deep into his reserves. They were all holding something back for this event. So watch out for Simon Gerrans. This is an ideal kind of race for him. So we'll talk about Gerrans a little bit later on. So as we start to rejoin the leaders, and I have to say, nice to see South Africans present with MTN Quebec as their team, but also Jacobus Ventner also in that leading group for MTN Quebec. There's a lot of riders from that squad having a tough time at the back. It's difficult when you're a team trying to break through. You get selected for a top race like the Liège-Bastogne-Liège, but you also want to put your good team into a race like the Tour of Turkey, which is over on the far side of Europe just now. Long line of the main peloton now as it starts to stretch out. We're now at 56 kilometres to go, and that puts us 12 kilometres, 10 kilometres, shall I say, from the start of the Côte de la Redoute. You'll start to see some serious action now starting to take place as all of the teams try to place their riders in a nice position to start the Côte de la Redoute, a climb that Philippe Gilbert really does like. It's just down the road from his house, Remouchon. He was actually born in Verviers, which is not too far away from Liège, but he regards Remouchon as being home ground and home turf now. Peter Belletz has slipped down towards the back. BMC here, BMC looking after their leader Philippe Gilbert, while on the other side of Europe this week, one Australian's had an excellent week of racing, and that of course is Cadel Evans coming out with a victory, put into a great position by his team, who dominated the team time trial in the Giro del Trentino, and Cadel then took the overall lead and never looked back after that. 46 kilometres to go, so 6 kilometres for the leading group of 5 riders to the start of the Côte de la Redoute. And the race organisation, who were pulling all the cars out of that gap a few moments ago, could very well be quite right there, because they didn't want any cars in the gap as we started to approach the Côte de la Redoute. There's the Eritrean rider just sitting down towards the back there. Daniel Tekla-Hamonot, 226. Interesting story because, in fact, the rider from Eritrea was invited to Aigle, which is not too far from Geneva or Lausanne, which is the headquarters of the World Cycling Union, the Union Cycliste Internationale, and he was part of the development squad for international cyclists, and he improved over the years to get himself a position on an international team with MTN Quebec. He's a very good rider. He rode a season or two ago for Orica Green Edge, but I think now it's taken a little while for him to start to develop, but here he is riding right at the top of his game in a race like Liège-Bastogne-Liège. More respite. Mick Rogers in the middle with the white sunglasses. Tony Martin over to the left-hand side. Two brilliant World Time Trial champion. Oh, there's Dan Martin now. He's the third place rider in the Garmin Sharp colours there. You can see these riders now getting that little bit nervous as they start to realise, yep, this is the moment. This is the time when we're going to start to line ourselves up for the Côte de la Redoute. Famous climb. Scary climb if you're not a climber, because although it says it's 7.5% average for 2.3 kilometers, well, it really is a little bit nasty. Around the corners it gets to 15 and 16%. We're talking a little bit about the Tour of Turkey, which took place today, a circuit race around Alanya, 140 kilometers. Well, the winner, this may well be good news for the riders from Omega Pharma Quickstep. In fact, it was Mark Cavendish who's got his season back on track, winning the opening stage of the Presidential Tour of Turkey ahead of Elia Viviani and Theo Bos of Team Belkin. So Cavendish has gone down there, and he's hoping that that will set him up for a good Tour de France this year. The Château de Haut-Regard, a high look, is what that means when it's translated. And there's a beautiful H hedge right in the middle of the chateau grounds. It's now a fully functioning farm, and as you can see, the main field not taking any notice of it at all as they wing their way by. It's 50 kilometers now to go to the finish. About an hour and 15 minutes, 2.5 minutes. That's not a very big main field. .2:35. So obviously, as we look there, there's the South African national champion just sitting in the back there, Louis Menches, getting a taste of the big time here. Nice to see the South African national champion's jersey. There's Garmin, that's Romanas Novodauskas. He's the rider from Lithuania, former winner of the under-23 version of this event. Pierre Roland is the rider from Europcar in third position. Lots of nervousness now. Now's the time when there's going to be a big battle for positions. The dark blue jerseys and the lime green, Movistar, looking around their shoulders, looking for Alejandro Valverde. Cofidis also trying to keep their men up towards the front end of this pack. This is not the moment to think about touching your brakes. At a moment like this, you touch your brakes in this line of riders, you'll drop back 15 or 20 positions, having battled and used so much energy to be in the top 14 or 15 places. All of a sudden, you've wasted all that energy and you've got to do it all once again. Down the descent now. 48 kilometers to go, about 3 or 4 kilometers to Remouchon, across the town, over the bridge, over the river, and then through the little neighborhood, and that's when the Côte de la Redoute starts. Michael Koch coming through there for Cannondale in the lime green. Birman Lang of IAM Cycling in the blue, black and red. You just might have seen 72 kilometers an hour. You see they're quite banging on down this descent as they come away from the little plateau, the main field, and not too far back after either 2.5 minutes. That's around about 1.5 kilometers in actual distance between the leading group of 5 and the main field, which is not a lot of riders, not many of the 197 riders who actually started this race. We've been through Bastogne in the heart of the province of Luxembourg. We've been right the way through the hilly part. We've been over the first 6 climbs of the day: the Côte de la Roche, Santa Roche, Wanne, Stokke, Haute-Levée, Côte de la Vecque, and now we're just crossing the river. This is a sight to sore eyes. The race referees, a red car now being pulled out of the gap. These 5 won't have to battle for position as they start the Côte de la Redoute, because they will be able to pick their way through the crowds, but behind there will be a serious battle to try and find a good position for the start of the Côte de la Redoute. Round the roundabout, through the neighbourhood, these roads known extremely well to Philippe Gilbert, and I'm sure once we get to the slopes of the climb, you'll start to see written from the bottom right the way to the top, Phil, Phil, Phil. Phil is not for le King Philippe of the Belgians, but for Philippe Gilbert. Left-hander, a little bit further on a right-hander. As they make their way through these few last little townhouses, they will then open up into the fields, and that's when the Côte de la Redoute will start. 2.5 minutes is still the advantage. Oh. These riders have led this race since the 12th kilometre. They built a lead of 16 minutes at one stage, and now they've seen it crumble to just 2 minutes and 20 seconds. They know what it's going to be like. It's going to be crazy once they get onto the slopes of this climb. As I said, to 7.5%. Horrible climb, actually, because it's one of those climbs, it's as if you've taken a high lift jack. It starts off with a nice steady gradient, and as you get higher up towards the summit, it's as if somebody's jacked it up. It gets steeper and steeper. Then once over the top, you're out into the area of the fields where there is no trees left to protect you from the wind, which then begins to batter you. 2 kilometres to go, 8.9%. The town of Remouchon, to see if we can see. There are the lead motorbikes. A quick look there at the Château de Montjardin, the mountain of the garden. There's the main field, pulling out all the stops now this afternoon. They'll all be getting motivated, all be getting concentrated over this bridge. They've been over it many times before. They've done it this week in training. A little bit further up, you'll have a chance to look over to the right-hand side. There you can just about see the motorway. But by the way, that really is a motorway, an expressway, if you like. You're not supposed to stop your cars on there, but today it is a parking lot. It's a car park. It is full of spectators who have come out to see this race this afternoon. Starting to struggle a little bit, Michael Koch of Team Cannondale. Team Sky supported there over the right-hand side. That's simply the best. Well, it wasn't a great day for Chris Froome, the winner of the Tour de France last year, who was not able to come out, suffering from a slight chest infection. It may well be that the Côte de la Redoute is one climb a little bit too far for the 22-year-old German rider who slips away from this lead group. Now down to 4 men. 2 minutes is the gap. We've just gone through the small town of Sounier-Remouchon, which is the village where Philippe Gilbert now calls home, as we look at Tony Martin on the right-hand side. Look at the difference in the speed. The leading group of 4, their gap now is inside of 2 minutes. Tony Martin trying to set it up for his man. He'll be third in the line, the red and white jersey, the Polish national champion, Kwiatkowski. Also, the Belkin riders in the lime green. They'll be looking after Wout Mollema. Kwiatkowski having a quick chat with his teammate there, looking very calm. On the right-hand side is Pierre Rolland. Lots of chatting going on here. It's inside of 2 minutes. They've got around about 2 kilometres now to go to the top of the climb themselves. Koch is there. He cannot stay in contact with these riders, and the problem is it's one of those nasty climbs. Once you get over the top, you can't accelerate anymore because it's a false flat. I told you that would what we'd see, and there it is. Phil. And of course that's Philippe Gilbert. Pierre Rolland in the middle, the dark green jersey of Europcar. Kwiatkowski. There is Thomas Voeckler now, bobbing away over on the left-hand side. Tony Martin is the rider on the front. Dark glances, hiding his eyes, but the concentration is there. He knows he's got to keep this pressure going. It's a tough old climb, this one. Crowds being kept back by the barriers. We get to the top, plenty of black Yellow and red, the flag of Belgium. The next man to succumb to the pace here on the slopes of the Côte de la Redoute is the rider from IAM Cycling, Purmin Lang, the Swiss rider, slowly slipping away. Then there were three. It's Matteo Bono on the front, the Italian rider on Team Lampre. He's got the legs. He will have ridden this climb this week in training. Nice to see that the South African rider is still in contact. Slipping away, the man who's been the most consistent on the climbs now, 182, Peter Jacobs. Well, as the main field, they are taking this climb in their stride. Still, Tony Martin, first position. Pierre Rolland in third position in the dark green jersey. Nope. Down to 2. Or is it down to 1? It looks like now go over the top of the Côte de la Redoute. There's been no major reaction, though, in the main field. Tony Martin, well, there can't really be much of a movement when Tony Martin sets the tempo on the front, because he'll set a tempo that is just so difficult that nobody will be able to attack. Well, look at the gap. 1 minute and 40 seconds. Nathan Haas is the rider now in the middle. Just over to the left-hand side, the other rider from Garmin Sharp is last year's winner of Liège-Bastogne-Liège, Dan Martin. Just sitting there and his teammates to do the pacemaking. Life at the back. A nice place to be. Number 68, Peter Velets. He did a lot of work. The leader now, who leads this race with 44 kilometers to go. Matteo Bono really has plummeted quite a lot. Bono, the peloton is at 1 minute 30. Now there's a move coming. Now this is the man that I talked about earlier on in the race. This is Warren Borghia. He rides for Giant Shimano. He's a great rider, rode exceptionally well. I suppose you could say he was a discovery last year of the Vuelta a España. He won 2 stages in the Tour of Spain last year, stages 13 and 16. And hello, he's 21 years of age. He's a youngster, a new man on the block for France. He's not scared of the Côte de la Redoute, and bang, there he comes straight out of the pack. Everybody else surviving there. Carsten Kroon, 114. Saxo Tinkoff at the back of the group, but the front is where the action is. 2013 Vuelta stage winner. Not scared of the big mountains. There is the man from Cannondale. He's struggling the gap. 1 minute 30. You can see the motorway in the bottom there. That's the motorway that takes the riders from the edge right the way down to Luxembourg. Now, in the main field, they've allowed that acceleration to go. There's a move coming. No. Now the big accelerations are starting to come. No, they've actually reacted to that move by the Frenchman Bargoy. They've realized that he has got great climbing legs, and there is a reaction now starting to come behind. Now, Valverde is right up there. So now you can start to see this is interesting move now as we head over the top of the Côte de la Redoute. The accelerations are starting to come, and 164 is Tony Martin. Job done for the day. He can take a back seat and find the shortest direction back to Liège, quite possibly, here this afternoon. Now, this is Arredondo, the rider in second or third position for Trek Factory Racing. He's a Colombian rider on that squad. Looking over the shoulder, Bargoy saying, come on lads, this is a good move here. Let's not take advantage of the moves that's going to come from riders like Philippe Gilbert. We will do our own tactics here this afternoon. Second place rider on the road. This is the rider who rides for MTN Quebeca. It's Jacobus Venter, and he's just about to make the junction with the lone leader now, Matteo Bono. That makes it 2 men at the front. They're over the top now of the Côte de la Redoute. They'll get themselves back onto the main road shortly with a right-hand turn, but they've only got 1 minute and 22 seconds over the front end of the peloton. So two men lead the race. The race referee in the red car is pulling in behind the leaders. That means they've got more than 30 seconds over the chasers. Well, Jacobs is in third place on the road at around about 20 seconds. Here he is, 182, trying to keep himself in contact in this race. Number 154, Coach, is a little bit further back. And so 131, Warren Barguil is the rider in the black and white jersey. And the next rider in there, Omega Pharma Quickstop, is Jan Bakelants. And Arredondo is in there for Colombia, but the main field are not very far behind. It just goes to show the youngsters in this race don't have any fear of the reputations of the big men. Look at that long line of the main field now as they're stretched out, everybody over to the right-hand side. The wind is obviously coming from the left, pushing the riders right up against the edge of the road. A minute 17. 40 kilometers to go very shortly once we turn onto the main road over the summit of the Côte de la Redoute and start to come into the small town of Esprimont as we head then down towards the Côte de Forges. Now looking back, you can see the peloton stretched out across the road. They know they've pretty much got their prey in their sights in the crosswire as they start to spread out. They know now that there's an hour of racing left, but in that last hour of racing there are 3 climbs. I would say there are 4 climbs really, because we've got Côte de Forges, the Côte de Rochefaucon, the Côte de Saint-Nicolas, and the final climb of the day, the climb up here to the town of Ans. Trying to keep it going, but not going anywhere at all. 2 leaders then. The 2 men who were in that leading breakaway. One of them is Matteo Bono, joined by Jacobus Venter of Team MTN Quebec. Scrambling a little bit over on the right-hand side. This is the 3rd place rider on the road, 182. I think he's realized now he's not going to get across. When we look at the tête de la course on the left-hand side, we've got a South African leading Liège-Bastogne-Liège at 41 kilometers to go. A minute and 15 seconds is his lead. That's around about a kilometer on the road between the leading 2 riders and the peloton. And look how much that race has been broken up once again by the Côte de la Redoute. That's the right-hand turn onto the main road. A minute 13. Jacobs is at 30 seconds. He's halfway across the gap, so 500 meters between him and the leading 2, and then 500 meters back to the main peloton. The organization with this Côte de Forges have made it a very difficult approach to the Côte de Rochefaucon. It's Orica Green Edge coming to the front, looking over their shoulders, looking to figure out whether or not they're going to get some assistance now. This is the 2 leaders, Bono. Well, this is 3rd and 4th on the road. In fact, this is IAM Cycling, and this is Lang, who's joined up with Jacobs. They're at 3rd and 4th on the road, and not much further than 30 seconds. But every time we go around these corners in the town of Esprimont, you're hoping as a rider in this move that you can see the 2 riders in front. These are the 2 leaders now. Bono in the purple and blue jersey of Lampre. Venter of MTN Quebec, riding a very good race. Bear in mind, these riders have been at the front of this race since 10 o'clock this morning. They've been in the saddle for almost 6 hours of racing, and still they've got energy to keep pounding away to conserve a little bit of their advantage. Bakelants was quite aggressive going across that gap there with Warren Barguil, the young Frenchman, 21 years of age, on the giant Shimano squad. As we look now at 2nd and 3rd on the road, about 500 meters separating them from the front end of the peloton. Race time, about 5 hours and 45 minutes. Around about 1 hour to go as we look at the 2 leaders on the left-hand side. They've gone through the town of Esprimont. Now into the small town of Teux. We're in the region of Teux, and we'll be lining up very, very quickly in about 7 kilometers time for the Côte de Forges. Lots of moves now, lots of little trying attacks to see if everybody's got the power. Looking down that line to see if I can spot Simon Gerrans. He was in a good position coming into the start of the Côte de la Redoute. Dark green jersey there is Pierre Roland. 45 seconds. The two chasers will very shortly get picked up by the main field. That's only 20 seconds. That's around about 300 meters separating the two chasers who are in second and third and fourth position. Jacobs and Lang. Very shortly that what remains of the main peloton there will start to see the two chasers, but the leaders are still holding on to in excess of 1 minute. Now the next climb there you can see the deviation of all the motorbikes coming up to get in behind the race once again. The race organisation don't like all the motorbikes to go down these narrow roads, so every now and again there's a deviation for them to catch up and get behind the race. Big power now at 38 kilometers to go. So the two leaders, Bono and Venter, looking at 1 minute and 10 seconds, and it won't be long between the third and fourth riders on the road get picked up by the front end of the main field. So very good move, though, I have to say, over the top of the Côte de la Redoute by Bargoy and Bacalans. Just goes to show that they were ready for that move as they went over the top, but now it's Orica Green Edge moving to there's Simon Gerrans, number 71, lightening his load, getting rid of that bottle. He's got a couple of teammates still in the race with him, so that's important when you come into the final part of this race. There's a lot of riders there from Movistar looking after Alejandro Valverde. The national champion of Spain is still there, Jesus Herrada. And these are the chasers. There's a quick look there at the rider from IAM, that's Lang. Again, this will be a little quiet before the storm. The climb of Côte de Forges, again, is quite a long climb. It's a straight climb. It's a former Roman road. Straight as a die. It's a horrible climb because you hit it with a little bit of impetus, but then once you get part way up the climb, you lose that momentum, and then you've got to start to battle with the gradient. BMC, lots of confidence for their man Philippe Gilbert. They realise that this is a good chance for him. Sammy Sanchez was in difficulty a little bit earlier on. I'd expected to see a good ride by Sammy Sanchez, the former Olympic champion, who rides for BMC, was picked up just down towards the end of the transfer season when his team Muscatel Euskadi didn't continue in their sponsorship. So it's half a minute now is the gap to the two chasers, so they are recovering a fraction, but the gap between the leading two and the peloton is down to around about the 1 minute mark. There's going to be some serious moves, I would say, once we come to the climb of the Roche au Faucon, but to get there we've got a nasty little climb that's been put in called the Côte de Forges, 231 kilometers covered. Once we go over the Côte de Forges, we're looking at 31 kilometers or 40 minutes of racing to go to the finish. Oop, there we go. Those are the two riders caught halfway across the gap. 103 is the Australian rider on Team Sky, Nathan Earl. These two, I think they're about to raise the white flag now. They know they're not going to ride across the two leaders, and the better part of Fallon now would be to raise that flag, try and get a little bit of rest in the main field, and hope to finish the long escapade they started after just 12 kilometers of racing. That was as the race came away from Liège. 10:15 this morning, the race pulled out of the Place Lambert, just outside of the 16th century Palais of the Bishops of Liège, the Prince Évêque. Now turning off the main road. This is the little road now to go and find the Côte de Forges. The gap is still not very much at all. Well, Venter and Bono are still holding on, bravely holding on, I would say, to in excess of the 1 minute margin over the front end of the main field. But they know that very shortly that peloton is going to start to turn up some screws as they get to the Côte de Forges. Then the Côte de Roche au Faucon, which is a narrow climb, very steep. It's actually been resurfaced over the last 12 months. As we get a chance, the two leaders, you can see them just around the corner there, just in front of that motorbike. Their gap is about 5 or 6 seconds over the front end of the peloton. Bacalance, as I said earlier, the rider who attacked over the top of the Côte de la Redoute, a former winner of the under-23 edition of Liège-Bastogne-Liège, back now with Bono and Venter. South African rider wearing number 228 of Team MTN Quebec. They've survived a very long day, almost 6 hours in the saddle for these two riders, as the two chasers now are getting picked up by the main field. The narrow little road there is that common E25 and motorway just in the background there. And that's not a very large main field. So, just looking to see which teams are trying to control the front end of this. The next most important thing, I don't think we'll see a move coming on the Côte de Forges, but we'll see a number of teams of the big guys who want to win this race overall, trying to place their riders towards the front end of this peloton, so they're in a good position once they come to the Côte de Roche au Faucon. Just down there, again, an operational farm. Nice little tennis court down in the back, and of course a swimming pool, which everybody needs at this time of the year, at a nice 12 degrees Celsius here in the heart of the Ardennes. Peloton has stretched out into a very long line now, 33 kilometers. You can see the two leaders, or the two riders who are halfway across the gap, slipping down the main field, looking for their mates to have a quick chat. Where have you been all day? Well, sorry, mate, I've been in the breakaway since this morning. Liège-Bastogne-Liège, Venter and Bono are still leading. 1892 this event was organised for the first time. This is the 100th edition. Venter now looks to be paying for that long day at the head of the event as he starts to suffer a little bit. There's the flag of the Wallonie just over on the right hand side, the cock on it, on that yellow flag. He's got his radio in there to get information. He cannot stay with Bono. Bono says, mate, I'm off. I can't wait for you any longer. I've got to see what I can do in a situation like this. So Matteo Bono now of Lampre and Italy is the last survivor. Now he's starting to open up a serious little gap. Matteo Bono, there is the main field, a hairpin turn for them. There's not very many more than about 60 riders left in that group from the 197 starters. There's Gilbert. Nervous over on the right-hand side. Marcus Burkhardt in the lime green shirts for BMC, also looking after his teammate, making sure he keeps him up to the front. These are the moments now when everybody's starting to wonder what's going to happen. That's Portuguese rider Nelson Simões from Lampre, who was doing a little bit of the pacemaking. There's Kwiatkowski there in the white jersey with the red band around the middle, a national champion of Poland. Also over on the left-hand side, the Luxembourg national champion as well, riding for Trek Factory Racing. That's Bob Jungels. He's a good rider who could put a special move in down towards the end. Matteo Bono is not losing very much time here, but now he's on his own at it as we come down to around about 32 kilometers to go. So 32 k's to go for the one lone leader, and he's got 57 seconds over the peloton. Formerly South African national champion, the first African ever to wear the yellow jersey in the Tour de France, gifted to him by his teammate Simon Gerrans. They're all paying now, aren't they? They're popping one at a time. Marcus Burkhardt over on the far side with those lime green shoes of his. They've become the trademark. Kevin Retzer, 196 at Europcar. It's tough, this climb now. We're starting to slowly but surely scramble up this Côte de Forge. Also there over on the far side, Rory Sutherland, his job done for the day. He's trying to set it up for his teammate Roman Kreuziger. That's what it's all about, sacrificing yourself for the teammate and the team leader. Also slipping away now there, you can see Bram tanking. That's a bit of a surprise for Belkin. Obviously not the man with the gas this afternoon. Garmin. Now this is an interesting move here, as we see Garmin waiting to see if there's going to be any response at all. 51 seconds is the gap. Just a little move, a little dig to make it that little bit more difficult. Reaction coming from Belkin. Everyone looking over the shoulder. When you see riders looking over their shoulders like that, that's an indication everybody's legs hurt. 500 meters now to the summit of the Côte de Forge. Bono will be the first man to go over the top of that climb, just as he was over the summit of the Côte de la Redoute. Leaves 2 more climbs. Here he is. We just about missed that. 41 seconds. 42. 42. Bono goes over the top. 40 seconds. That's around about 600 meters. On these long straight roads now, they'll start to see the shadow of this man who they haven't seen since around about 11:15 this morning when he got into that breakaway. There were originally 6 riders, Lang, Koch, Venter of South Africa and MTN, Bono, Jacobs and Mina. They built themselves at 16 minutes advantage. Here's Venter of MTN. He's flown the flag bravely for MTN Quebec this afternoon. Over the top of the climb there in 3rd position. There's the still for Stan Ockers, the rider who won the Flèche Wallonne and the Liège-Bastogne-Liège back in 1955. Oh, there's a problem here. Now this is Bakelants, and now he's been in the wars this afternoon. Jan Bakelants, 162, the winner of the under-23 edition of Liège-Bastogne-Liège. He's not happy there. The problem with his machine, the team car up alongside him, panicking a bit, a little bit of a slow change as we go back to look at the edifice at the top for Stan Ockers. Great Belgian professional cyclist. Well, 34 seconds. Venter back in the race. Now, looking here, I would say that Bakelants is around about 40 seconds in arrears. A big wide road now. 30 kilometers to go to the finish. That's 18 miles of racing. But more importantly, what's looming on the horizon very shortly, in 10 kilometers from here, is the Côte de la Rochefoucauld. Alex House is the chaser. Riding for Garmin, the American rider, wears number 5 for Garmin Sharper. Now this is to toughen the race out. In fact, it's forcing a little group to come off the front end of the main field. We've got 6 miles now between the top of this climb and the next climb of the day. There's that little group, that's Pierre Rolland is a rider from Europcar. They're all looking over their shoulders. Nobody wants to make the move. Nobody's quite convinced that this is the move that's going to go clear for the next 10 kilometers. 10 kilometers, they're knocking those off between 12 and 13 minutes at a pop. Number 73 is Simon Clark. Simon Clark, he's done a good ride too. Still up there, but it's back together. A race situation. Still the lone leader, Matteo Bono, chased by the American rider Alex House. Not too far back though is the main fielder. He's trying to put pressure on the peloton here, trying to take pressure off his own teammate Dan Martin, the defending champion, wears number 1. For the Irishman, it was a very proud moment yesterday when he pinned the number 1 onto his jersey. There's a big bunch of riders still there. There's Kwiatkowski in the red and white jersey over just to the left hand side of the peloton. 31 seconds to Alex House, and just 10 seconds behind him is the main field. But these long straight roads, these long boulevards, are not good for Matteo Bono. The main field can judge when they want to make that move. I wonder if Bacalans can get back after that very slow wheel change that he's just had. After having a crash in the early part of this race, that's another blow for the Belgian, Bacalans. Alex Huez looks back, he's got a good gap, but it's only about 10 seconds, and he's using an enormous amount of energy here just to stay off the front end of the main field. He's 30 seconds behind the lone leader, Matteo Bono, who was in that early morning breakaway of 6 riders. Still a lot of riders haven't announced their colours this afternoon. Vincenzo Nibali is in that group, Kwiatkowski. Frank Schleck is still in the group as well. I'd like to put in a good performance here now on the big wide roads. 28 kilometres to go. We're looking at 6 kilometres to the next climb, the Côte de la Roche au Faucon. And it's a very fast descent over the top of the Roche au Faucon, around the outskirts of Liège, through Serein, which once hosted the start of a time trial in the Tour de France that was won by Miguel Indurain. Then through the outskirts of Liège into the little suburb of Saint-Nicolas, or Little Italy as it's called here in Liège. There'll be plenty of Italian flags down at the bottom of this climb before they set the riders and welcome the riders to the Côte de Saint-Nicolas. Huge battle. Alex Huez, he's got the hole, and now there's a lot of there's another move now. Now this is obviously something that has been planned by Team Garmin Sharp here. I noticed a lot of riders from Belkin at the front end of the main field. 231. This is an interesting move coming from Jérôme Bonny, who rides for Wanty Groupe Goubert. Comes right across to Garmin Sharp, but what is it? It's only 10-12 seconds. Alex Huez onto the wheel of Bonny. A lot of riders from Belkin near the front of that main field, probably to look after about Mollema. Again, the peloton is stretched out across the road. They're not chasing it. They're not really putting the hammer down for the approach to the Côte de Roche au Faucon. Everybody knows it's a tough climb. It's about 1.5 kilometers, but it's 10%. There are moments when it's as steep as 12 and 13%. And this year there's no little smooth path down towards the side, the smoother cement guttering that was used by the riders in the past to find some smoothness. It's been resurfaced now. It's a much better road surface. Interesting Lotto Belisol. You've got Dennis Vanender. Not Yellow Vanender, but Dennis has got himself in there for Lotto Belisol. On the defensive, I would say, is the reason he's gone in there. Just Peter Weening. And that's an interesting move for Weening. The peloton, though, still look as if they're waiting for the moment to pounce. It's not a big peloton. Down to possibly 50 riders. Just a quick reminder, coming over the race radio, it's a new rule for international. You're not allowed to race on the pavement at the side of the walkway, and that's been reminded to all of those riders. Well, that little move has come to nothing, as it's all pretty much back together. AG2R are the riders who put the impetus onto the front end of the peloton to nullify that move. 30 seconds. Race situation at 25 kilometers to go. Just one lone leader. Still, this man, Matteo Bono, leads this race. He's led this race since the 12th kilometer. He knows what's on the horizon. He knows there's only 2 climbs between him and a victory in Liège-Bastogne-Liège, but he also knows how quickly the big names can hit those climbs when they really start to open up the gas throttle, and that's what they will do. 24 kilometers. That's about 3 kilometers to the start of the climb of the Côte de la Roche au Faucon, the Rock of the Falcons. The Falcons will be circling over the top of the main field here. AG2R La Mondiale, they're very keen to really put the pressure on here. Robbed of their man Betancourt before the start this morning. He didn't come out to play on this stage, on this race, unable to sacrifice his health when he thinks about the rest of the season that's lined up for him. The peloton straight out into that long line. They drop down. This is a well-known road to many of the riders. This is the usual approach to the climb of the Côte de la Roche-au-Faucon, arrière du peloton, the back end of the main peloton. South African national champion Louis Meintjes still sitting there, wears number 223. He was wearing the white jersey for MTN Quebec, right on his back. 18 seconds is the gap now, 23 kilometers to go to the finish. Around the corner, hugging the corner, the apex of the corner nice and tight. He wants to make sure he loses as little time as possible on this descent. The Roche-au-Faucon is the next climb on the horizon, 1.5 kilometers long. Average gradient of just inside of 10%, 17 seconds the advantage of Bono. Well, he's 17 seconds, that's about 200 meters advantage for. He's lucky because on this twisty, bendy descent down to the bottom of the Côte de la Roche-au-Faucon, they won't see him around these corners, but once he gets onto the climb, they will almost be able to reach out and touch him. And that's when the big V8 engines will really start to get those turbos whistling as they open up the gas on the Côte de la Roche-au-Faucon to get rid of the guys who've been hanging on for the last hour of racing, just hoping that they can survive. Here's the bottom of the climb. Bottom of the descent, I should say. They're now into the town of Méry. 22 kilometers to go. Town of Méry. He will cross over the railway crossing, Passage à Niveau, and then that's when the climb will start. Big wide road. There'll be a left-hand turn very shortly as he lines himself up to the Côte de la Roche-au-Faucon. He daren't look over his shoulder now because at 200 meters, he has looked over his shoulder. He wants to know exactly where they are. The gap is around about 10 seconds. I would say, looking back there, he will have seen the whole of the main field, or what remains of them, just boring down upon him. Once again, over the river. Camera pulling out. What can we see back there? They've still got a little bit of space between himself. It's just 9 seconds. The peloton are now over that same river now in a very long line. Well, Jan Bakelants, according to Race Radio, has managed to get himself back into the main field. That was a brave and courageous return back to the peloton. So here we are. So right at the front now, it's AG2R, La Mondiale, as we start the Côte de la Roche-au-Faucon. So AG2R looking round, they really were. That's Minard, who's the rider on the front, doing that pacemaking there. So a little bit further back, are they trying to set this up for Romain Bardet, the Frenchman on AG2R La Mondiale, a very good climber. He would try and take advantage. Oh, there's a problem there on the right. That's number 5, and that's Alex House, who was off the front just a little while ago. He's got a problem with his gears. I don't think he'll be seeing the peloton anymore here this afternoon. 43, Cataneo from Team Lampre. He's struggling at the back. We haven't got to the steep part of the course now. 20 kilometers. 12.5 miles of racing. AG2R trying to put Bardet into position. Sébastien Minard is the rider doing most of the pacemaking here for AG2R La Mondiale. They're looking back over their shoulders. Astana have also got a lot of riders there just waiting in the wings, waiting to see when the time is ready to make that move. The first rider from Europcar there is Thomas Voeckler, grimacing once again. Behind him it's the young Frenchman Peric Kemener. So 2 riders from Europcar. Just looking a little bit further back, there's a little move coming. Go Phil, and they would all like to see Phil have a go if he can on this climb. GT2 are stamping their authority on this race. There you can see the new road surface here, a lot smoother than it has been in the past, making this climb a lot quicker, the ascent. Arredondo over on the right-hand side for Colombia and for Team Trek Factory Racing. Nice acceleration for him, and there is a move coming from Bardet. 172, Julien Arredondo makes his move straight out of the pack. Romain Bardet is a rider straight across to him. Philippe Gilbert is now coming across the gap as well in the red jersey of BMC. Looks over his shoulder. Alejandro Valverde not far away. Kwiatkowski is there as well in the red and the white. The fans are out here to support their man. But is this the time that Philippe Gilbert needs to make that move? Maybe not quite right. What an explosive little move again coming from Trek Factory Racing. Comes up alongside Bardet. They've not got to the top of the climb yet. It's a little bit deceptive, this climb, as they wait. The fans have camped out here for a long time to find a good place. There's Valverde just a little bit further back. Kwiatkowski. Now is the town to make the move if you can. The gaps are starting to appear. Dani Moreno going through there for Team Katusha. Kreuziger is there in the yellow and blue of Tinkoff. So Arredondo, look at a grimace on his face now. He looks back to see what sort of damage he's doing. He's not scared of these climbs at all. A small little climb like this is nothing compared to the 40-kilometer climbs back home in Colombia. No reaction though. Strange to see that there is no reaction coming from the main peloton. But there is still 19.5 kilometers to go.
Right, well that was a maximum effort race. Bearing in mind as well that I've done this ride, this route 3 times this week already. On Thursday, sorry, on Friday night, I got a 1 hour 20 minutes and 1 second personal best, in which I went as much power and much effort as possible. I went like full power, full effort for that 1 hour and 20 minutes. And then somehow I have arrived at 1 hour, 12 minutes and 12 seconds. And even managed to finish the race on a sprint with Eddie a few meters behind me. So yeah, that's a tough race. I'm glad that I have been able to complete this race a few times this week, only because I knew that the first 3.5k or so was relative. So the first 1k or so, 1.5k, was relatively easy, mostly for a little bit downhill. And I also knew that after the tourist village and that red cow, red dragon, whatever it was that you see in the village, things get a little bit easier with 2 descents around 17.5k into the ride. We also finish on a downhill as well. So yeah, I've got a new PB. I managed to finish the first 1,000 meters in about 54-55 minutes, which I'm happy with. And I also managed to get into the top 10 as well, which was another goal. Shout out to Grosjean, because I gave him a heads up on the route profile before we started yesterday or the day before, just to give him a heads up of where the steep parts were, where the easy parts were, and I gave him a bit of a lead up for the first 4k or so, just to get him in a good position. No idea who the hell it was in the very front who sort of took off and had beat everybody else by about 10 minutes. Were they like a pro racer or fake weight racer or what? I don't know. But yeah, they were like way ahead of everybody else. So whether that's like a legitimate ride or not, I don't know. Anyway, he's gonna just see which pictures they took. And we also have a big race this afternoon as well. yeah, I'll see you there. I'm going to sign off now anyway. Okay, and I'll be back on this afternoon at 3:15.